Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Monday night panel. We've got a lot of guests. Hello, Vic, are you there? Are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
You are there. You're here. Right. Have you got any announcements to make, or should we bring the guests on?
I think we should crack straight on. Hello, am I back? Get the guests on, Chris.
Okay, you keep dropping out, so I'm just going to bring everybody on now.
Hello, Rob. Hiya.
Hello.
Hiya, Gus. How you doing?
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Mark.
Evening, Town fans.
Anna.
Hello.
Nearly there.
We're getting there. Anna.
Hello. There we are. Yeah, we're getting there.
Andrew.
Mr. Balls, good evening to you. Oh, he's gone again.
Okay. So that should be everybody now. Andrew doesn't want to come on.
Have we got Mr. Halls there? Is he there?
Okay. Yeah, he keeps dropping out, so I might leave it until he can. Might have to log back in. Oh no, he's back in.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Okay.
He's back.
Yes.
Right, I'm going to leave you.
Okay, Chris is gone. Are we all present and correct? Rob, are you here with us?
Allegedly, yes.
Marvellous. Gus, from the good old US of A, you're with us?
Yes, sir. Signing in from Virginia.
Lovely. Mark, a very good evening to you.
Evening, all.
Anna, good evening to you. You're next to your brother, which
Here in body, if not in mind.
I'm sure you're delighted about.
Absolutely.
Mr. Halls, good evening.
Hello.
Mr. Halls, hello, and Ray from his hotel room in the Arkle stand at the county ground. Good evening to you.
Good evening, all.
Right, let's get on to business then, because it's a busy old night. We've got lots to get through. I thought what I'd do is go through the season, because that's what we're here to do, is to review it. I'll read out the results and where we finished it at the end of each month. Gus, I understand, obviously, that in the first part of the season, you didn't really have any knowledge of Swindon Town. Where were you with our beloved football club in, say, July?
Completely oblivious. Had no idea. Never heard of Swindon, never heard of the Robins, didn't know anything about English football at all. Marvellous.
We will go through the tale when we get through it, how you did get involved and how I'm sure you're regretting every single minute of it after.
Nope.
But no, we would welcome your input anyway. Right, in the appointment of Mark Kennedy, of course, heralding a new dawn at the start of the new season, when he turned up the county ground to be announced as the new boss. One friendly I would like to point out, for some reason, Eastleigh 1, Swindon Town 0, Eastleigh scoring after about a minute, and Swindon failing to respond. And then in August, there was a friendly, Swindon against Wickham. Swindon won 1-0, which showed great promise, I think it's fair to say. League 2 opener, Chesterfield 1, Swindon Town 1. Will Wright with the first goal of the season. And strangely enough, he got our last away goal of the season as well. The League Cup round 1, Crawley 4, Swindon Town 2, Offerbore and Smith, the goal scorers for Swindon. And then League 2 at home, we'll all remember this one, Swindon 0, Walsall 4. Then the Borefest, Crewe 0, Swindon 0. And then defeat by Notts County at home, the last game in August, Swindon 1, Notts County 2, Kilkenny for Swindon. That man, McGoldrick, with both goals for Notts County. So, Rob, at the end of August, we were 23rd, played 4.2. How was August?
Well, obviously, we thought that was a poor start. Inevitably, it was that Walsall game is the one that sticks out in everybody's memory. But when you actually look back now, We played 3 teams who made the playoffs.
Hmm.
So you've got to say that actually the start was pretty tough in terms of the games that we had. But you've got to give more of an account of yourselves than we did in a couple of those games. I mean, the game we took a point from at Crewe, I can always remember walking out behind a Crewe fan who just turned to his mate and said, "If those 2 teams aren't the worst 2 teams in this league this year, I'll be in a and spot on, to be quite honest. Absolutely spot on. At that point in time, there was no threat whatsoever at the top end of the pitch. That was the biggest issue. Defensively, we had our usual calamities that we've been quite familiar with over previous seasons, but we hoped that would get better. But we really, really were struggling to score goals. There just didn't feel like that there was many attacking opportunities at all. I won't go into the Mark Kennedy era just at this minute in time, but that was probably something that pretty much resonated throughout, wasn't it?
Andrew, you did the post-match interview after the Walsall game, and one comment that stuck with me throughout the whole of the season, he said, "We will lose lots of games this year," which, driving away from the county ground, filled me with great spirit. How did you feel after that game?
I think it was a pretty ruthless reality check, wasn't it? A couple of games in as to how we're going to look. I suppose the one thing you might have clung to a little bit was Walsall finished of last season pretty strong, and you thought, oh, maybe they might be up there, but that kind of the gap was sort of alarmingly evident, really. Well, we kind of got very efficiently League Two'd off the pitch by Walsall, really, which was, I think that was quite concerning that they were just kind of they just looked a bit sort of too strong and too streetwise for us.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that they were miles ahead of us, Anna, wasn't it? I mean, Crewe 0, Swindon 0, that wasn't exactly inspiring. And then that man, McGoldrick, who came and ripped us to bits at the county ground.
Yeah, I mean, when you get a new manager coming in and pretty much in a reshaped squad, almost in its entirety, you've got to hit the ground running. We know we've had slow starts in the past, haven't we? Like, go right back to Macari days for slow starts, and Di Canio didn't start brilliantly either. But yeah, we're looking back now. Obviously, hindsight tells you the writing was on the wall for Kennedy and the way he made that team up. And there was nothing to hook onto, was there? From the Chesterfield game, you kind of thought, great, good away point, first game of the season, and it steadily went downhill after that for the rest of that period. So there was nothing really to get your teeth into and be positive about at that point. And the post-match interviews, we might come on to Kennedy again a little bit in the subsequent month, but there wasn't anything. There was no reality check, was there? There was no reality in what he was saying post-match.
We were top of the league after the Chesterfield game, albeit that only 2 teams had played a game at that particular point. Mark, I mean, that first, I think everybody sat there at the Walsall game. We played really well at Crawley in the League Cup, and they were 2-0 up. We got back to 2-2. And then lost 4-2. And we thought, oh, okay, we're playing all right here. And on the back of that Chesterfield draw, we thought things are going well. But I think Walsall, spanked us basically, didn't they?
Yeah, if I look back to that month and think about the games that you've mentioned, Vic, I can remember feeling a bit of hope after watching the Crawley game and also actually the Notts County game. I thought we were really unlucky to lose that game. It was 2-1. Without McGoldrick, we would have won. And I think Kilkenny scored, didn't he? After I think he put us 1-0 up. But the biggest memory that I have from that month is going to the Walsall game full of hope and coming out feeling absolute despair, thinking, right, we've lost our first home league match in League Two 4-0. I repeat, 4-0. So all the hope that I think was nearly 8,000 that day, goodly number from Walsall. I came away thinking, what on earth have I just seen there? That was dire. Is it a one-off? We realised then after a while, after 5 games without a win, that it wasn't. And it was dispiriting. And it also probably knocked about 1,000 off the gate in one fell swoop, didn't it?
Yeah.
Dreadful.
I think we should say, of course, that Mark Kennedy had his personal problems and nobody would take that away. Yeah. He lost his father. And I think, absolutely had everybody's sympathy. So I think we should make that point at this stage. This is from Anthony. We clearly got the player recruitment right, but if you don't have the right leader manager, it's fruitless. Nothing against Kennedy's, but some of his interviews and analysis simply bizarre. Right, Ray, what were your thoughts after that first month? I mean, 23rd in League Two, 2 points after 4 matches. Not a great start, was it?
No, not at all. I went into it actually feeling a little bit more positive that we wouldn't be so easy to break through. We wouldn't be rolling over, because I know pre-season we looked reasonably organised, but even then never looked like scoring. And I think that kind of was the flavour of that first month. And of course, there's 2 4s in there. We conceded 4, so the harder to beat thing fell apart a little bit quickly. But then we did obviously get the draw at Crewe. But I was feeling already then this is a bit worrying because we weren't creating. And that's kind of the theme for me, really, in that first period.
Gus, this is from Sean. Sorry I missed out, but how did you get to choose Swindon? No, one American. It was because of XTC, the very famous musical band that comes from Swindon. I don't know whether they ever made it in America. I think they toured there, but I don't know if have you heard of XTC?
I think I have heard of them, but I couldn't name a song, and I don't know. I didn't know they were from Swindon. Basically,
right. Do you want to go through that story then? And then
sure.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that exciting, but I'd be happy to. So my sons came home from college. Back up just tiny bit. This will only take 15 seconds. We visited the UK a year ago in January of 2024 and just loved it. Had a great time. Loved the people. Loved the pub culture. Loved the food. Traveled around a little bit and had a lot of fun, and ran into some football fans in pubs who looked like they'd been in the pub for quite a while in a couple of instances and were pretty rowdy, but seemed to be having a good time. So fast forward 1 year, my sons came home from college for Christmas break or the winter break, and we all decided we would pick a team. And we didn't want to pick a Premier League team because we just think they're kind of overhyped and it didn't seem local and fun. And, we wanted to do something a little more anachronistic, I guess. And almost literally threw a dart at a map and came up with Swindon, and started watching on December 26th was our first game. And we've been watching ever since and having a great time.
Well, it's a wonderful story, and we're glad to have you with us. This is fantastic. And we'll obviously talk more throughout the course of the next hour. Let's get into September. The EFL Trophy began then. A local game for me, Exeter City 2, Swindon 1. You might remember Joel Cottrell got the goal in that one. It wasn't a bad performance, to be honest. But league, here we go. One we all remember with such fondness. Barrow 1, Swindon 1, Butterworth 90 plus 8 minutes. We'll get onto that in a minute. League 2, this gave us a great deal of hope. Swindon 4, Newport 0. Shimanga with his first league goal. Glatzel, a Baker own goal, and Cottrell again. Swindon 0, Carlisle 2. Those bottom of the table clubs, eh? Pesky old things. And Port Vale 2, Swindon 1. Will Wright on target. Our league position, 21st at the end of the month. Played 8.6. Barrow, Rob, how angry were you?
Extremely. I think Andrew and I were together that day in the commentary box, and I can remember him looking at me when Butterworth got our goal, and my comment, I'm pretty sure on air at that point in time, was, I feel so sorry for Barrow because they simply don't deserve to not get the 3 points here. I mean, they were down to 10 men for what, 60, 70 minutes when you add on the stoppage time as well. And we forced their keeper into one save in the entire time he was there. And let's be honest, he was a centre-back from the Irish leagues, or whatever he was. I mean...
he played truly football, to be fair.
It truly was one of the most heart-wrenching days to be a football supporter. When you look at a game like that and you think you've created nothing, absolutely nothing against a team with 10 men and a goalkeeper who basically probably doesn't even know how to tie his shoelaces up. I mean, it truly was horrendous. And it was one of the longest journeys back. And let's be honest, when we've all been on those long trips before now, we've nicked a point in the last few minutes. It's usually one of the most exciting trips home you're possibly going to get because you're all full of optimism and hope and whatnot. We were downbeat and crestfallen at the fact that we'd nicked a point at the end. It was a very, very bizarre turn of events. And it truly was, I think, even though it was so early, for me, it was the beginning of the end for Mark Kennedy.
Yeah, we should say, of course, they had their goalkeeper sent off. Harry Smith got sent off as well for the infamous elbow. But I think, Andrew, what angered many people on the bus afterwards was the comment, we didn't think our goal would come from shooting. We told them to pass, but of course our goal came from a shot. And it's a substitute goalkeeper, they didn't have a substitute goalkeeper on the bench today. I mean, how frustrating was it to commentate on, for goodness sake?
Yeah, no, I think it was that almost willful refusal to not not shoot and not put pressure on a standing goalkeeper in a defence that is going to inevitably sit there a bit deeper to try and protect him. And I think, I do think that's a kind of one of the sort of key two parts of where Mark Kennedy and fans really kind of became detached. I think that the kind of explanation and the immense self-confidence with which we were explained that you don't really shoot a standing goalkeeper, and we're all a bit like eyebrows up here. And it's I sort of get what you're trying to say, but there's still the thing sort of flashing in your front of the brain. It's a stand-in goalkeeper. The normal rules do not necessarily apply here. But I think that was certainly among the more befuddling games I've had to try and sort of explain to people, because like I say, I think Rob and I were just kind of askance. It's like at some point you've got to shoot. You've got to see where I can handle it. And of course, we know how the goal came from a sort of shot hit with a bit of pace by Butterworth, but which I think a full-time professional goalkeeper would not have found unduly concerning.
Yeah, I think it's also worth saying that the free kick from the sending off of the goalkeeper, instead of shooting, what did we do? We passed it around a bit and nothing happened. I think that set the trend, didn't it, for the remainder of the game, Anna? I mean, it was one of those games when you think we've equalised, but actually, I'd rather we didn't, if that's a bizarre thing to say.
No, I think a lot of people were thinking that at the time, weren't they? And it was desperately unlucky for Barrow to hold out for so long and then concede in that pretty much the last kick of the game. So I was more kind of buoyed, I suppose, looking at the Newport game. What a strange lift that gave us for that period when nothing followed it. And if you like, it was all done by half time, wasn't it? We were 4-0 up by half time, I seem to remember. And we kind of went away thinking, well, where did that come from? Because it was anomalous compared with the previous set of results, but nothing followed it. And then the Carlisle game didn't Hall give the ball away for one of the goals in that game? I'm trying to think which. There was an incident with Hall, I think, where he messed up in there and gave him a goal. So there was just it's all a bit bitty that month, really, because you've got the draw at Barrow, a good win against Newport, to be fair, although looking at where they've ended up, that's perhaps a reflection of that as well. Yeah. So yeah, it's still very early days, and I think was that the month as well with the first fans forum with Kennedy?
That's yes, and he said all three of them said they wanted promotion, and they were quite confident of it. Yeah, and
I think I might have commented on this on one of the Monday night panels around that time frame, but I remember asking a question around the turnover of staff and the fact that Kennedy had come in as a new coach or manager to the club, and it's a very, very small percentage of managers in their first season at a club that get promotion. I think it's something like less than 25% if you look across League Two history. And I made that comment, and they said, well, he said, I remember Kennedy saying, well, I'm not a new manager, when he was really. He'd had a short spell at Lincoln where I think they'd had an amazing amount of draws in his tenure there, from what I recall. And perhaps that was a bit of a pattern as he came into take over us, that we apart from that Newport game, we didn't look like scoring an awful lot of goals, did we?
No, I think if I remember rightly, Mark, didn't Newport have a lot of problems before they went into that game, suspensions and injuries and stuff? Yeah. So it wasn't a surprise that maybe we got that result, but we all left thinking, well, here we go then. We're off and running.
Yeah. Well, it was a very good first half. As Anna rightly said, we were 4-0 up at half time. I don't think we did anything second half. I seem to remember that was George Cox's debut as well, and it looked as if we'd found a player there who could actually get forward and cross the ball, which we were crying out for. I think the early days of Kennedy in August and September, what characterised performances for me was a lack of spirit. There just seemed to be something really insipid in the players. They just seemed to be playing with sort of shackles on, as if they weren't able to take the handbrake off. And when I listened to that post-match interview after the Barrow game, I remember thinking, mate, you are talking a load of drivel. Well, anybody who's been watching or playing football for any period of time will know if you've got a standing keeper, you rein in crosses and you rein in shots all the time. You do it as much as you can, but for him to come on air and say you don't win it by shooting, what planet are you on, mate? Honestly, because we all know that that's what you have to do. And in the end, it took a lucky goal. I remember sitting and watching the game with a mate of mine, Anna will know Toddy. We sat and watched and laughed when that goal went in. I don't remember laughing very often at Swindon Town results, but it just seemed a bizarre end to a bizarre game when you've got a standing keeper. And I think you're right. I think Rob said, I think it was literally the only shot we had in the entire, what was the keeper sent off? About 30, 35 minutes for an
Something
hour.
like that. Yeah.
That's
I think
rubbish.
I think he did make one save, the standing keeper, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
He got a round of applause.
It's going wide anyway.
Yeah, but he got a round of applause.
We were doing everything we could not to cross or shoot. It seemed to be we're just passing. You said it, Vic, earlier on when we had that free kick after the keeper set off. We're just passing it around. It just seemed to be directionless, rudderless, pathetic football, frankly. And the players looked bewildered, didn't they? Do you remember? They looked absolutely befuddled by what they were being told to do. And the fans were increasingly nonplussed, even after, what was that, about 8 games into September? 8 league games, 6 points, I think you said. Yeah.
Hang on, I'll turn the page back over. 8 games, 6 points, correct. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Ray, I mean, I don't want to go on about Mark Kennedy too much, but Daz has sent me his record, which we'll go through in a minute. But it just, when he came in, people were saying he had Richie Wellens vibes about him, and we all know what Richie Wellens is doing at Orient. Let's put aside the offside goal, which wasn't offside by 6 miles. But there was a lot of that about, wasn't there? And somehow that didn't happen.
Yeah, I think early days there was, and we're desperate for it, because you've got to remember, it was on the back of recruitment that was kind of more like what we'd all been crying out for. We'd gone in, we had some height, some physicality about the side. Not that all of them were playing at the time, but we went in with that optimism as well, because it was very different to, we were used to being pushed around for the last few seasons. So that kind of feeling was in the air as well. But it did start to unravel fairly quickly. And I like to think I'm usually sort of glass half full, particularly with new managers, because it takes time. But I can remember in that period, it's the Barrow ones, it's a standout example of where I think we started to lose a bit of trust in him. And I think it just didn't really recover from that, was kind of my take on it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Here's a comment for you, Gus. A supporter I know supports Swindon when he picked us out of a hat back in the early 90s. Been going home and away ever since. Think random things like that. You see, you're not alone, are you?
Good. Yeah. Long history of it.
Yeah, you're stuck with this now for the rest of the natural, don't you? This is it now. You can't get away.
Good. I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah, and we're hoping we're going to get a lot of fun next season, which is what we're all hoping for. Shall we go into October then? In the EFL Trophy, Swindon 4, Bristol Rovers 0, Glatzel with 2, McGregor and Amin. And then in the league, Tranmere 1, Swindon Town 1, a Merry own goal. Swindon 0, Harrogate 0. I can't even remember that game. That's how dull it was. Cheltenham 2, Swindon 3. I think we can all remember that one. The goals coming on that occasion from Cox, Wright and McGregor. It all nearly went horribly wrong, did it not? Swindon 1, Doncaster 2. Harry Smith scoring for Swindon in that one. And then the turning point. Salford 2, Swindon 1. Harry Smith with the goal. That was the end of Mark Kennedy. And we closed the month out. Swindon 1, Gillingham 1. the one with Holloway in charge but not in charge. Smith getting the goal, lead position 22nd, points 14, played 14, points 12. That was the month what done it, Rob.
Yeah, there's a lot of contrast in that month, isn't there? Because obviously there was the high of being able to get 3 points at Wadden Road, which for me obviously was very important, but for the team, something we've never achieved before in our league history. Yet it still felt like we came out of that game as if we'd been beaten because of the way that it happened. And let's be honest, if there'd have been another 5 minutes, we would have got beaten because the bizarre situation of 7 defenders and Amin up front in a game when you were so in control after an hour felt utterly bewildering. And it was one of those bizarre scenarios where actually you've won a game, you feel like you've lost, and the manager's lost even more credibility, even though he came out afterwards and suggested that we were all together when he came over and applauded everyone around the pitch. The reality was he'd lost the fan base already at that point. And the mysterious Nambi Offabor decisions in terms of he thinks he could go and get another team in non-league, when quite frankly we all thought at the start of the season that we'd potentially be building our team around Offabor in midfield. Utterly bewildering. And of course we could talk about the Miguel Freckleton scenario all day long, but probably best that we don't, because we've seen how good a player potentially that chap was in the second half of the season, which we didn't see at all in the first half. So it was a month of very, very bizarre contrast, but that was a sorry night at Salford. The Harrogate game you mentioned, nothing happened. The Bristol Rovers game was a breath of fresh air at the start of the month. They're actually playing a whole load of players who hadn't really played much in the first sort of like month and a half of the season. Suddenly, it looked like what we had behind the team in the first instance was actually going to be able to push them a long way. We saw the first real sign of Amin as a player, which obviously we've come to grow throughout the season. Glatzel looked to cut above on that occasion as well. He looked excellent. And we really did look like a bit of a team coming forward at that point in time. And then we go back to the drudgery as soon as we go back to the first team football again. And it was a bizarre month, but I don't think any of us with obviously hindsight's a wonderful thing. We all know what's happened under Ian Holloway since, but I don't think any of us were surprised or disappointed at the end of Mark Kennedy's reign.
This is from Daz. Swindon Town, 29th of May 2024, 25th of October 2024. Played 16, won 3, drawn 5, lost 8. Win percentage of 18.8%. That's from Daz. Thank you very much indeed. Hi, Andy. It was dire at Barrow, but Town fans saying they wish that we hadn't equalised is baffling. I don't think we said we hadn't. We wished we hadn't. What we said was
we didn't deserve to equalise.
No.
Not a question we didn't want us to. We didn't deserve to.
Yeah. So what about that record then, Andrew? 18.8% win percentage. Not great, is it?
No. I'm not sure the stats lie, but while we were sort of looking at it, I was kind of thinking then, because that was the sort of month where we can sort of talk in a positive way for a nanosecond, because Joel McGregor did sort of kind of emerge into the first team. He got his goals in that game against Bristol Rovers, and then of course at Cheltenham. But it also kind of highlighted, in a sense, the weirdness of some of our sort of decisions higher up. In that, who remembers Jeff King? And the answer is, I'm assuming almost no one at this point, because we brought in a right back whose vast majority of career was at non-league football, when we had our own right back who'd shown some promise in the academy, who was waiting to come through. So we blocked off McGregor, and we brought in a player of not great quality. I know again he had some personal issues as well, but perhaps that's a sort of, you kind of pluck that out there. The kind of decision making at all levels really is, I think, is a bit summed up by that kind of hurried signing of Jeff King and the fact it didn't really work. But the Salford game, I do remember as just, if we were meant to be a passing team, we kind of abandoned it then. I can just remember us hitting balls aimlessly in the direction of Harry Smith in that first half. I don't think Salford were great either. They were on a slow start, but that was, I think when you came out of that game, you thought there's a real season of struggle on here. And, perhaps the fact that whatever identity we were trying to establish had sort of melted away already meant that it was time for the axe to fall.
Yeah, I think Jeff King came on the back of that good performance against Wickham in the friendly, didn't he?
Yes.
And I remember the crowd singing "Sign him up." So that's the impression he made. Anna, October, how was it for you?
I don't know. Two overriding memories, really. I know there's mixed thoughts about the EFL Trophy competition as a whole, but that game, if my memory's not tricking me, weren't we 4-0 up at half time in that one as well?
I think we were,
yeah.
So I came away from that thinking, right, Kennedy's really got to pay attention to what went on in that game. There was some real togetherness. I know it was kind of almost like a makeshift lineup in a way, because when the team lineup came up, I thought, oh crikey, this might not look so good. But in actual fact, there was a lot of energy. There was great running. You said Glatzel had a brilliant game. Amin got a goal, and I thought, well, pay attention to that lineup. And then the next game, I don't think there was basically no change to the subsequent lineups to kind of follow on with a bit of momentum on that, which I thought was a shame, really. If there was there was some sort of thought behind that rather than just throwing things together. And then as Rob mentioned with the Cheltenham game, I've been waiting so long to go to Whaddon Road and win, so long. We've been so close on a couple of occasions, and I thought I'd feel euphoric, and I came away thinking that just doesn't feel like a win. Does not feel like a win because of the way we conceded those two late goals and almost threw it away completely. The win, it just felt like damp squib, really, and that was perhaps again telling around the relationship that Kennedy had with the players as well as us as the fans, although he claimed some togetherness. So that was a big disappointment. I kind of feel like I've got to go to Whaddon Road again now to get a real win, which is I never thought I'd say that.
It was a bit like Accrington the previous season when we were 4-0 up after 90 minutes and then very nearly threw that one away. Hi, Rich. Best game of the season is Bradford at home. What a game. We'll get to that later. Trust me. And I want to see us fighting promotion next season. Is it true about the new TV screen so we can all watch replays? I don't know is the answer. How ironic. We win at Cheltenham for the first time under Kennedy's football. Was same under Sheridan with his local derby wins. One notable away win at that place up the A420, who we don't mention. Mark, October.
Yeah, I think it's been pretty much summed up, hasn't it? I'm going to disagree with Anna a little bit. I did come out of Cheltenham feeling quite euphoric because I've been there like Anna a number of times. I've seen some terrible, terrible performances, not least when Andy Gurney and Matt Hayward were arguing with the fans, and that was absolutely terrible in the early 2000s. And so I did come out of it thinking, well, we won. I take the points about nearly throwing it away, but we didn't throw it away. We won 3-2. And I remember going to I think we went to a pub afterwards in Cheltenham because one of my lads lives in Gloucester, and we went for a meal, I think, afterwards, and it did feel good. But there was something odd, wasn't there, in the whole thing about Kennedy? I wasn't sure what the team's identity actually was. Were we a passing team? Were we trying to play long ball? I don't know, and I still can't really think about it now. I just don't know what we were trying to achieve in those first sort of 12 or 13 games. Whatever it was we were trying to achieve, we were failing, weren't we? Because we weren't going anywhere. We were getting the odd result, the odd strange result, Newport, that we've already mentioned in September, and then the Virtue Trophy game, the Bristol Rovers game, the Cheltenham game, and then some truly dire games. I mean, any of us sitting here who watched the Swindon and Harrogate home game, you'd be struggling to remember one single thing about it. Because I'm sitting here now and I can't remember anything at all. No. And that sort of characterised the sort of featureless, empty, boring, rigid football. He was playing a 3-5-2, as I recall, and it just wasn't working. There was no plan B, and I have to say the plan A wasn't very good either. So I don't think any of us were in mourning when Kennedy. I said what you were saying earlier on, Vic, about personal issues, and perhaps that affected his judgment. I don't know, but I don't think any of us were mourning when Kennedy left, and perhaps we were raising some eyebrows when Mr. Holloway came in, me included.
Well, Ray, that was going to be my question to you. Ian Holloway was appointed pretty damn quick afterwards, let's be honest. It was within, a couple of hours, if I remember rightly. What was your initial reaction?
Positive, to be honest. I thought I was positive about it right from the off. Obviously, what we've been going through, as Mark's kind of summed up there, the change was needed, and I thought, for me, why not? Because we've been through a phase of these kind of academy coach type managers, and actually it wasn't very entertaining. We were getting some sort of lots of passes and not much entertainment for it felt like forever, but 2 or 3 seasons. So from that point of view, I was glad to see a football person, a traditional football person come in. I felt we needed the character as well. It was so drab before, and I thought his character might be something that was good for us, and thankfully it's kind of gone that way. So I was pretty pleased when it happened, and I was hopeful, and thancfully, kind of as we'll get onto that, but it was not unfounded anyway. And I think even in the first game, where, as you say, he wasn't actually managing the first game, but I think, did we get Hull sent off in that Gillingham game? Was that the game where we went down to 10? And then we seemed to have a fighting spirit almost from day one with him on the sidelines that maybe you couldn't have seen being there in some of those previous games. So it was a positive for me from the off, really.
He wasn't allowed to be on the bench, but I think he spent most of the time shouting at the bench, didn't he? So I think it's fair to say he was kind of in charge, but wasn't in charge. So that's October wrapped up then. Let's go to November. An EFL trophy win against Tottenham under-21s. Butterworth and McGurk getting both the goals. I won't make any jokes about Tottenham and winning matches. That would be churlish. We also had an FA Cup first round tie against Colchester. Yes, Colchester. Swindon 2, Colchester 1. We actually won a first round FA Cup tie. It was 2-1 after extra time. Joel McGregor and Shamanga. If you want to sing the song, feel free to do so. Swindon 2, Colchester 1. In the league, MK Dons 3, Swindon 1. You might remember we went a goal up after 16 seconds through Harry Smith. Most of us were sort of still drinking tea at that particular point of the time. And then League 2, Accrington 2, Swindon Town 2, Smith, and that goal by Butterworth, which we'll get onto the goal of the season a little bit later, but many people would say that was the goal of the season. Maybe we can discuss that one. And then Swindon 2, Morecambe 3, Drinnan and Delaney for Swindon, and yet another poor result against a side that gets relegated. Extraordinary. League position, 22nd, played 17, points 13. And this, Rob, is where kind of it starts to change. All right, Morecambe, oh gosh, the name of the former Swindon player, Alan Moat. Didn't he get the winner in that, if I remember rightly? Yes.
Did, yeah.
Yeah. It began to change around, but again, we lost to a side at the bottom of the table, like Carlisle. So, there were still problems, but it was beginning to shift.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think Ray summed it up quite well, actually, in terms of we were all hopeful with that Holloway appointment because it just needed a clear the air, experienced manager. It was a crucial appointment for them to get right because, let's be honest, the end of October, we were only going one way. So we needed a complete change of direction. We thought at that point we probably needed to change a whole load of personnel in January as well. Clearly, we needed to change the manager and we needed to get some direction in the team and get them playing to the best of their abilities. And we all know what's happened since. We've proven that those players were good enough. Recruitment-wise, wasn't bad in the summer, as it turned out. It actually did bring in some good players. They just weren't being played in a way that they could possibly achieve anything. And I think that's the damning indictment of the previous regime. But in comes Ian Holloway, and as you say, you can't turn that oil tank around in 5 minutes, can you? And that's the problem. There were green shoots. That Colchester FA Cup performance was promising, was positive. The Tottenham game, again, we saw players we hadn't really seen too much of in the previous couple of months, and they put in a performance there too. Accrington, the Butterworth goal was indeed our goal of the season, as far as I'm concerned. There was no doubt about that. But even then, the last 15 minutes, we got our first glimpse of how Ian Holloway really wanted to change the way we wanted to play, didn't he? Because we were all thinking, go on then, try and get yourself a point. No, he wanted 3, didn't he? We had 5 strikers on the pitch towards the back end of that game. And I think we just virtually abandoned midfield and just played long balls forward and see what we could do. And they were really struggling, Accrington. I think that game could have gone either way, but we could very easily have come away with 3 points. And all of a sudden, just when we think we may be on something good here, the good old wind tunnel at the county ground turned up against Morecambe. We were against it first half, and they battered us, didn't they? Absolutely battered us, playing typical long ball football that you see at this level so often. No quality, just bang it forward down towards where the wind is and you'll make mistakes. And we did. We made 2 mistakes, got ourselves back in it, had the wind in our favour, got back to 2-2. Go on, then go and win the game in the last 40 minutes. No, we commit suicide at the back and let Hallam Hope nip in and score the winner. How typically Swindon to finish the month. It was just typical. We thought we'd made 2 strides forward. We'd taken 3 strides back.
Yeah, we should mention, of course, the FA Cup round 2. Yes, there was a round 2. We were in it, strangely. Accrington 2, Swindon 2, with Hall and Cottrell getting the goals. But it went to extra time, and of course we lost a penalty shootout. No surprise there for anybody, really. And so our FA Cup action was at an end. Mark Kennedy confused me more than many previous managers. I had no idea what our identity was and couldn't see any real pattern of play. Holloway gives us hope, arguably still does, says Mark. Rich, Ian Holloway's a leader and a positive for the club. Can't wait for the Bristol Rovers Swindon fixture. I'll be going to the away game next season. Come on, you Reds. And hi, Andy. Joel Cottrell goal of the season against Port Vale. I think it was them. It was. We'll talk about that later. Andrew, sorry. Yeah, as I said, it was beginning to turn around, wasn't it? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could see bits that kind of Rob talked about. We were already showing a bit of kind of comeback ability to get that point against Accrington, because I felt like Accrington were pretty strong in the first half, and then we gave them a bit of a kind of going over in the second. And even against Morecambe, you started off badly, and you've sort of dragged it back and put yourself at least in a position to win the game. Although maybe I'm getting overexcited about being in a position to win a game against Morecambe. Maybe that's kind of an indictment of where our reduced expectations were at that point. But I mean, you could see bits. I still wouldn't say that by the end of that month I'm that certain we're going to get out of it. But I think it did. It probably felt a bit better, even if the results weren't much better.
Anna?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, anything was better than Kennedy, I have to say. And that's, that's the truth of the matter, isn't it? That I think we'd all had enough by the end of October with the lack of identity, the lack of passion, the lack of motivation from the players. I think you could say it invariably looked like they didn't know what they were doing, and subs came on, they didn't know what they were doing. So anything was going to be better. I still think it was really early days in terms of Holloway. You didn't really know whether he was going to turn it around. And any new manager appointment is a dice roll. He's had successes and he's had failures. He's had more successes than he's had failures, to be fair to him. And he's clearly someone who can get the best out of players. Doesn't matter perhaps who they are, but I think that again, that EFL trophy game, I think we had a Monday night panel again just before that, and I was saying it's about momentum for me. Never mind what the competition is, you get a win against in the EFL trophy. Then we had the win in the FA Cup. I'm not sure what order that came in terms of that Colchester game, but for me, it's just too early to say what it was going to be like under Holloway, whether it was going to be a success or not. He came in apparently on a remit of getting us promotion, I think, didn't he? Which we all laughed about at the time, and perhaps sort of a bit of a chuckle about. But there was clearly the remit of saving us from relegation. And if anyone could do it, then you do want a seasoned manager who's been there and done that to get us out of that trouble. So it was just still too early to see how it was going to shape up for me.
I think the one thing you can say, Mark, is passion. I mean, he clearly lives for football, doesn't he? He was out of it for 4 years. He clearly wanted to get back into it. And anybody who was at any of the events at the end of the season will know his passion when he gets on a microphone. That's for sure. But he did bring that, didn't he?
Yeah, it was just that fight, wasn't it? I mean, that was so lacking in the players in the first dozen or so games of the season, and then you just caught glimpses of it. Yes, we lost to Morecambe, but we did come back from 2-0. came back from 2-1 down at Accrington, and then, as Rob alluded to, had about 17 strikers on the pitch and just went for it, and that was really, really good. And then the 2-1 in the Colchester game, I remember coming out of that thinking, yeah, that's really good. When did we, sort of win a game in extra time where we again had been 1-0 down? I think McGregor might have got his first goal for the club that night, and that made it 1 each. And then Shamanga scored to make it 2-1. So, yeah, you came out of it thinking there's a bit of fight there, and of course that's what characterised Holloway's team for most of the rest of the season, and that for old lags like me, fans for many years like me, it was nothing short of fantastic to see the fight and the passion that those players showed, and how Holloway referred to the players playing like fans, playing for the badge, playing for the shirt. We hadn't seen that for so long, and although we'd recruited well in the summer, actually the first 12 or 15 games, Swindon had reverted again to be playing like a kindly aunt, hadn't they? They're just being knocked over and just being an easy touch. And then suddenly those players looked so different. They were up for it. They were fighting. They were passionate. And that was really good.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, I think, Ray, that was noticeable, wasn't it? That there's a lot of questions coming in. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll get into the next month, that question, because I think, I bet Andrew loved going from 7-minute interviews with Mark Kennedy to 35 minutes of time with Holloway. I know how he feels, having interviewed him a few times now. What were your thoughts, Ray? At the end of that month, we're going to get into December in a minute, Gus, so you're very nearly going to be part of this, so stand by. Ray, going into December then, because we're going to go into an early December game, which we all know about in a minute. But we were thinking, well, okay, things are looking up.
Yeah, I think so. Like I say, we weren't out of the woods in terms of poor results, but there was a little bit more hope. And you mentioned the FA Cup tie at Accrington is another example of where I think we went down to 10 in that one as well. Well, I think Butterworth got sent off. Was it Butterworth got sent off? So he'd scored the great goal in one of the games and got sent off in the other. But we pushed them all away with 10 in that one, if you remember. It went to penalties. But so from that point of view, there were a number of things around there, particularly around the cups, where it was looking up a bit. So to say, we certainly wasn't looking like we were there yet. But I had a slightly warmer feeling, I think, than I did at the end of the previous month. Yeah,
sure. Right, let's get into December then. This one's going to hurt. Day after my birthday. Thanks very much. Loved it. Colchester 4, Swindon Town 0, bottom of the Football League. Swindon 3, Fleetwood 1, Smithwith 3. League 2, Bradford City 1, Swindon Town 0. And whilst we talk of Bradford and Valley Parade, of course, we should remember that awful event 40 years ago, unbelievably, the Bradford fire disaster. And if you haven't seen it, there was a wonderful documentary on BBC Two last night regarding that fire and the effect that it had on many people. So if you want to go and watch that, you should do, because it just tells the story of how people go to a football match and expect to go home and sadly didn't that day. It's a very good documentary. League 2, Swindon 3, Grimsby 1, Clark and Shamanga with 2. And then League 2, Wimbledon 1, Swindon 1, Harry Smith getting that goal. Bromley 1, Swindon 1. Longello, remember him? He got that equaliser, great goal into the roof of the net. And at the end of that game, league position was play 23, points 21. And in the EFL trophy, it was Wickham 1, Swindon 2, Kirkman and Shamanga. Kirkman coming back from TSB non-stick Teflon, I think, one club in Wales, wherever it was, and it was tremendous. Right, let's go to Gus, shall we? League 2, Wimbledon 1, Swindon 1 on Boxing Day. What were your initial thoughts of Swindon Town?
The initial thoughts were it was a lot of fun. I was with both my sons, which of course made it a lot of fun. Also, let me just say I'm repping James Madison University today. These are my.
I was going to ask you who that is. Yeah.
My oldest son is graduating university on Saturday. It's our first child getting out of university, so I'm gonna be wearing this. I hope he's watching right now.
Congratulations, by the way, for graduating.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I mean, it was a heck of a lot of fun. I have to say, it's so helpful to me to hear what you've all just said, because I knew none of this. You know, I could look at the the results and see, what happened, but I didn't know the ups and downs and the disappointments. And, I think Mark described the players as befuddled, bewildered, and playing with a handbrake on. I didn't know any of that. We just started watching games. The first 10 games that we watched, we won 5, tied 4, and lost 1. So I thought, this is great. When we lost the third game, I think I watched, I thought, well, that's a big disappointment. I don't want to lose. That's no fun to watch, So I'm getting where the occasional gallows humor comes from now. We've been a pretty rarefied air. I said this on a previous show, but one of my first reactions and one of my biggest things that I've seen happen in the, I guess, 5 months I watched, in the first game, other than watching the USA women very occasionally in the World Cup and maybe seeing 2 high school soccer games in my life, I'd never watched a soccer game. So I was thinking, why do they keep passing the ball to the other team? What's going on here? And that's something that I think if you look at the passing and you look at the ball control in the 5 months since Boxing Day, it's an incredible improvement. It has to have been an emphasis for the coach and the team. They've really gotten better at passing. I'm still not a big fan of passing the ball backwards. That's not something we're used to at all, but I recognize there are times when it's important. But we saw a lot of great improvement. We just had a lot of fun watching the games. Of course, if you have a noon game, it's like 7 a.m. for us, so we're watching early on Saturday mornings. Most of the games are at, probably at 12:30 here or 10:30 here.
Yeah, well, it was good to have you along. And when you got in touch with us and told your story, we immediately got you on this panel, which was fantastic.
I will give credit to my younger son. Sorry, too. He actually signed me and himself and myself up for the fan club. So we got our little shirt medallion and our cards in the mail, and we're pretty excited about that. So if there's anyone listening who is not a member, you should be a member of the fan club.
Excellent. Well, there's one very good question, actually. You've put me into this. This is from Glyn. Hello, Vic. Could you ask at the end of the session how to renew the supporters membership, please? Well, it's quite simple. If you're a season ticket holder, you're automatically a member of the official supporters club. If you're not a season ticket holder, you can join for £5, I think it is, for the whole of the season. But of course, you don't have to be if you don't want to be as a member of this, if a season ticket holder. It's entirely up to you. But you are automatically a member if you are a season ticket holder. Right, I've got to go back to that day, that Tuesday night, Rob. It hurts, but we have to discuss it. We won't talk about it for too long, but it did change our season, did it not?
Yeah, I mean, it was the nadir we've all talked about many times on here since then, isn't it? Because we all know things turned around from there. We were talking about November being the odd shoot and a positive step forward, but we had to hit that new low really for Ian Holloway to realise quite how bad it was playing the way that we were playing some of those times. And that first half and that coach trip home from Colchester, 2 of the worst experiences as a town fan I can ever remember. I have to say it was horrible, absolutely horrible. On the way back from Colchester, thinking we are the worst team in the Football League. We've never been there before. We never want to go there again. But we all felt on that trip that whilst there was no real prospect of turning it round, you just saw the enthusiasm and the passion Ian Holloway had about how he wanted to change things, and he wasn't going to accept what we just had to witness. That simply wasn't good enough, and that simply had to change. And that is exactly what he did. Those home performances in December were excellent. Okay, we were a bit wind assisted, as we always tend to be at the county ground in that period, but we took Grimsby to the cleaners, and comfortable so.
That was his 1000th game in management, we should point out.
Yeah,
ironically,
absolutely.
against his former team, yes.
Indeed. And Fleetwood, thankfully, straight after Colchester, just turned up and thought they're going to roll us over, and they did nothing of the sort. We suddenly developed, overnight, it felt like, a real steely mentality in that we are not going to go back to that place again. And there was a couple of really tough away games over Christmas, Wimbledon and Bromley, both of whom really get the fans behind him at their places, and they're difficult places to go. And both of those draws, or they didn't do much for our league position at that point in time, those are games that we would have got battered in earlier on in the season under Mark Kennedy. So you could see there were green shoots at that point.
And I still say the referee in that Wimbledon game is the best referee we've had all season.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, she was
especially
excellent.
disallowing that goal at the
Yeah,
very
right
end.
at the end.
Would have been a
Yeah.
right kick in the teeth.
Great decision. Followed Holloway for years, always a character, gets the best out of players, and his introduction of starters and finishers makes everyone feel part of the squad. A typical old school manager, a breath of fresh air. That's from Gary. Nick says, one of my favourite memories of the season is the term Coach Holloway. I wonder where that came from. I don't know where that might have come from. Andrew, that December was decent. I mean, there were draws, weren't there? But, particularly at Bromley, when we went a goal down to that massive forward, if or centre half, I can't remember which one it was, but he was about 12 foot tall, wasn't he? You just felt, they were decent draws away from home.
Yeah, no, they kind of did sort of continue the upward plane, even though, as Rob said, they were 2 points, because we know that Wimbledon have had a pretty successful season, and they are pretty hard to break down as a rule, especially at home. So that felt like a good draw. And again, Bromley are pretty kind of physical and awkward. So I think it goes back a bit to what Mark was talking about, that actually we kind of, I think perhaps maybe the sort of overall feeling from that sort of Christmas period is we're actually going to at least stand up to be counted here, and that the team actually wasn't going to get knocked about so much or be roughed up or battered. There was a bit more of that kind of just spine to the performances, really. Even if football wasn't always particularly fluent, we were a bit more direct, and no shame in that, and very necessary, I think. But yeah, those were only 2 points, but I think you came away from both of those with the feeling that we've certainly got the ability to get out of the worst of it and push up.
Chris reminds me that membership starts on the 1st of July this year for the official supporters club. I'm going to rattle through this a bit, Anna, because time is against us. But there's lots to talk about, especially when we get into January, because there's one particular result which we're going to highlight. EFL trophy, by the way, Swindon won Birmingham 2. Harry Smith with a towering header. He kind of repeated that against Bradford City. It was a similar move, if I remember rightly. Really great header. Swindon, let's get into January then. And let's talk about this one. And the first of the really great late finishes. Swindon 3, Colchester 2. Clark, Drinnan, and a Cox penalty, 90 plus 7 minutes. Notts County 2, Swindon 0. Swindon 0, Crew 0, the fog match. You might remember that one. Who could ever forget it? Swindon 2, Barrow 0, Offerbore and Smith. Newport 1, Swindon 2. Smith and Wesley with a debut goal. Great goal from him. Swindon 3, Tranmere 1, Glatzel, Smith, and Shamanga penalty, 90 plus 4 minutes. League position, played 29, points 34, position 16. Colchester at home, Anna. What are your memories? The first of the great late finishes.
Yeah, and there were some this season, weren't there? Not half, and those are the best. Those really are the best games when you've been behind. You think all is lost. And you pull something out of the bag. I think the Tranmere one was even more last gasp, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We were still 1-0 down at about 87 minutes, and to come out having won that Colchester game in that fashion, that really did show the spirit of the team. And you've got to say that, although for those people that were there at that dismal night in Colchester in early December, maybe it was a blessing in disguise, I'm going to say, because it really did put the rocket up everybody, including Holloway. Holloway, by his own admission, came away from that saying, that is enough. That is not how we're going to play. That is not how my team are going to turn out. And by the Saturday, 5 days later, we'd beaten Fleetwood 3-1. And I think Charlie Adam was sacked after that game, wasn't he? I think that's right. I think we ended a few managerial careers this season but the turnaround, the ability and the mentality of the coaching team and the players to turn it around from early December to that game was just phenomenal. And then as you go into January, we were unbeaten for 9-10 games at home, weren't we? So and that was what held us together. So draws at Wimbledon and Bromley, good results
Yeah.
against teams that could have battered us and were quite physical. And we'd have probably snapped hands off at that point for just points away from home. So it was looking much, much better at that point.
Mark, George Cox. Now, he's been released by the club, but I think if you mention George Cox's name in 10 years' time, those of us who were there at Colchester on that Tuesday and then in the return on New Year's Day will always remember that moment when he put that penalty away. It was fabulous, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of just going back to that Colchester game, I remember sitting down with people around us, Mr. Simon Harris, if you're listening, saying words to the effect of, we're done. We're down. That was the feeling quite a few fans after that game. I said, hold on a minute, let's just wait. It's only December, but feeling a bit doom and gloom myself, and then coming out of the Fleetwood game thinking, right, okay, that's one small green shoot of recovery, and hopefully we'll see some more. And then it really went from there, didn't it? And like Anna said, the biggest thing that characterised the season for me were the series of fight backs. It wasn't one or two. It was 6, 7, 8 times when we were down in games. And those players were suddenly showing real fight. And you're coming out of games, the Tranmere game, like, springs to mind, where it was a poor game. We were 1 down. It didn't look like anything was going to happen. And then we equalised. And before you knew it, it was 3-1. And you're coming out of the ground with a spring in your step going, right, I remember now why I go to football. I go to football precisely because of those reasons, coming back against Colchester. And then you can list the games, Bradford obviously being the best one of all, where we've been down and out and looking as if we were going to get nothing, coming back to getting a draw, and then suddenly in the last minute, and it does seem to be 90 plus 3 or 90 plus 4 or 90 plus 7 sometimes, and you're coming out of it thinking that was just great. You're feeling about 10 foot tall rather than tiny.
Ray, yeah, George Cox. I remember interviewing him afterwards before the game, the following game. He was out. It was his birthday, I think, and he was sort of saying, I was interviewing him on the pitch, and he said, I had no problem at all. He said, I knew I was going to score. And we're all in the stand going, please score. It was just, whatever you do, score. It's moments like that, as Mark said, that's why you go to football, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And those are ones that kind of raise the roof off the stands as well, aren't they? It's such an atmosphere when you get those last minute sort of comebacks and wins. And that was a really good memory. And yeah, it's a bit sad to see him go, really. In terms of the retained list, etc., I thought it was all pretty logical. That was the only guy that I had some question in my own mind. What could he turn out to be? Because his crossing abilities, that was brilliant. So yeah, but that was a great one, Vic. That was a real moment. Yeah, and just thinking back to the turnaround from Colchester, because I was the same as Mark. I was thinking, oh, are we going to get off the bottom? It really felt like that. But within the space of a few weeks, we looked completely different. And that was the point. I was kind of waiting for the points total to flip over to be more than the games played, because you could start to get a feeling, we might get out of this. So that's kind of where I was at that time, I think. Yeah.
Fair enough. Gus, I don't know, what's it like when you watch it 3,000 plus miles away and those last minute winners go in? What's the feeling like?
Well, I think I said this before, but my dog is terrified as I'm screaming at the television alone. It's a lot of times my kids were back in college by January, and I'm, yelling, and I don't know how many people in the United States are watching the games, but, probably not a whole lot. But it's exciting. It's exciting. They had some wonderful, wonderful finishes. There were also times I remember in January, I feel like there was a period where they were trying out, what if we're bullies? What if we fight really hard? I remember Harry Smith was out there he knocked, literally throwing people to the ground. And it worked to some extent. There were home games where I felt like the other team was intimidated. That's not probably the way you're supposed to play football, but, I felt like they were trying some things out in this period and trying to figure out really who they were. I personally think when they got Tom Nichols in around that period, I think he's one of the most talented players on the team. He doesn't get a lot of credit. He is a good passer, but he also knows when not to pass and when to go past his man. That's something that Botan Amin is really good at too. A lot of the guys have gotten to be good passers, but they generally just pass to each other. And these guys can also break free. And I thought that was kind of a interesting time in January watching Nichols.
Very interesting. Botan, I mean, of course, much speculation about him at the moment. We shall see how that unfolds. Right, let's rattle through this. February, Carlisle 1, Swindon Town 5. Now, that's worth, and there's a song which I won't particularly sing, but those who were there will remember that song greatly. Butterworth, Drinnen with 2, Glatzel and Wetsley, fabulous performance. Lee 2, Swindon Town 3, Port Vale 3, Wright with the penalty, Butterworth and Cottrell with that stunning goal, which reminded me of the Kenny Stroud goal against Everton many years ago. And you could discuss whether that's the goal of the season or Butterworth's the goal of the season for ages. They're both fabulous goals. Lee 2, Harrogate 1, Swindon Town 0, and Swindon 1, Chesterfield 0. Shamanga penalty. League position 15th, played 33, points 41. This is from Shawnish, isn't it? Where is it? I know it's Adrian. Wow, he's mentioned Drinnen scoring twice tonight. Did he get that many? And Daz says Aaron Drinnen, appearances 28, goals 3, assists 1, yellow cards 0. I still think he was a big miss, wasn't he, in the latter stages of the season? Right, we're going to go through this very quickly because time is against us. So February, Rob, how do you think that was? A Shamanga penalty again is decisive, but there was the disappointing performance at Harrogate on a drizzly old day.
Yeah, it's a real shame because that just stopped our momentum. It came to a shuddering halt, didn't it? I agree in Harrogate, because those performances of January, they'd saved our season. There's no doubt about that. There was still real worry with Newport at home, away, with Tranmere at home, even with Barrow at home. If you go back that far, those games were crucial wins, every one of them, because at that point in time, we had to put 3 points on a team who were close to us. We just had to do it, and we did. And then we went to Carlisle, where we were all thinking the Mark Hughes effect. This team might turn around now because they spent a hell of a lot of money in the January transfer window. This could easily go against us. And we put on a stunning performance. There's no doubt about it. We just took them to the cleaners. And Aaron Drinnen that day was probably his best performance, without a shadow of a doubt. And he came off the bench to do it as well, early on for an injury to Ollie Clark. So it was a real shame when he got injured and our form then dipped against Harrogate, because we just had all the momentum at that point in time. And I don't think we ever really got it back. I can't say that we were ever really in the hunt for the playoffs, as we've all been talking about before. But had we beaten Harrogate and beaten Chesterfield, all of a sudden then you'd probably found us in mid-table and really having a decent shot at it. But Harrogate took all the momentum away.
March, League 2, Walsall 0, Swindon 1. What a day. Cottrell with a goal on a fabulous day. We thought, what a fantastic performance. And then Walsall didn't win a game again, I don't think. Swindon 2, Salford 2. Again, a great fight back. Nichols and Smith. I think it was Nichols' first goal, wasn't it, for the town? Doncaster 2, Swindon 2. Butterworth and Wesley, 2 goals in a couple of minutes. Botan Amin. What a performance from the substitutes bench from that young man. Swindon 3, Cheltenham 3. Wright, Shamanga with a penalty, and Clark. League 2, Swindon 0, Accrington 0, and Morecambe 1, Swindon 0. Now, you could argue, Andrew, there were those draws, weren't there, in March, and that defeat at Morecambe. That pretty much did it, didn't it?
Yeah, I think there was a bit too much to kind of recover from that point. But again, it's like I think Salford looked a completely different side from the reverse game. Perhaps quite an Ian Holloway game is that sort of Doncaster one when we're 2-0 down at half time to I guess we were 2-0 down away to the eventual champions, as it turned out. And then it was that kind of use of the bench and real sort of dice rolling, and that got us back into it. And we landed some good punches on the team that won the league. We had enough in us to kind of at least avoid defeat against Cheltenham, and then weirdly Accrington were unusually good at kind of shutting up shop against us. But yeah, it kind of slowed us down a bit. But I'm glad, going back a little bit, Rob mentioned that January run, because I can remember circling that in the calendar. There's Barrow, there's Newport, there's Tranmere, and Carlisle, and by the end of it, we kind of won the lot, and you knew that it was going to be fine at that point. And Yeah, I think we got rid of a couple of managers as well, because I think that was Williamson's last game, wasn't it? I think we got Stephen Clement sacked as well.
Yes,
so,
we did. Yeah.
So we could enjoy being the Grim Reaper from time to time.
That was a great night at Newport, wasn't it? That Friday night. It was a terrific game. At the end of March, we were in 15th place, played 39 points, 48. I was going to make a point about one of the games in March, but I've completely forgotten what I was going to say now. Anyway, let's move on. Nice pub at Morecambe, I always thought. We won't be going there next season, of course. In April, League 2, Swindon 2, Wimbledon 1, Shimanga 2, 1 on 90, 1 on 94, both penalties. Fleetwood 0, Swindon 4, wonderful performance. Shimanga with a penalty, Freckleton with his goal, Bennett an own goal and off a ball. And Swindon 5, Bradford 4. Byrne own goal, Shimanga, Smith with 2, and Shepherd own goal. We'll never forget that one, will we? Grimsby 0, Swindon 4, Nichols, Clark, Shimanga, and Amin. And then the real banana skin. Swindon 0, Bromley 1 with a Will Wright own goal. And then Gillingham 1, Swindon 1, Will Wright. 13 position, played 45 points, 61. Anna, Bradford City, sum it up.
I don't think I can really. I think I pretty much lost for words at the end of that game. To come back from behind those times and really to nail it in that 90 plus whatever it was with a kind of comical own goal really, and have the players crowing over the defender who did it. That was just kind of topped it. I know that Holloway latterly said, let's have a bit of dignity, lads. But I don't think anyone cared at that point, really, did they? That it was such a fantastic performance. But there were a number, weren't there, in that month? My favourite game of the season, I have to say, was Fleetwood away. It was just a brilliant performance, and it just encapsulated the recovery that Freckleton made under Holloway. The fact that he got that goal celebrated with the fans, and towards the end of the season, he was man of the match quite a few times.
He was.
So
yeah.
that month was really something that you started to see. That Fleetwood away game, I thought, this is a Holloway side. This is a proper Swindon side that you can go away and you can think, yeah, this is some team. And you walk out of the ground, you hear the Fleetwood fans saying they're a good team. And that's what I like to come out of away games hearing, is the home fans acknowledging how good we are. And I'd like to think that that's a real, shows the sort of character hopefully we're going to have the next season with Holloway.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that very much indeed. I mean, you look at that month and Fleetwood, as you've mentioned, Wimbledon. Mark, I mean, how can you sum up Wimbledon? I mean, 2 penalties in the last 2 or 3 minutes. You're thinking Wimbledon have got 3 points here. There's no way we're going to get back into it. And yet we do. And yet we do against Bradford City. And, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, then both sides tried to rough us up. Wimbledon certainly did. They were one of the more physical teams we've seen. Certainly one of the biggest teams we've seen. They were massive, weren't they? And we just looked as if we were going to succumb to that. And again, 1-0 down, yet another comeback. And you come out 2-1, and Shimanga, really cool from the penalty spot on 2 occasions. It's a shame he couldn't match that for the Bromley match. Because if he'd scored that penalty, we'd have won that game too, without a doubt. We'd probably won it 3-0, but just one of those days we weren't going to score a goal. But you get days like that, don't you? You've got to accept that. What was it, about 4 or 5 defeats in the last 25 or something? It's exceptional form. I don't think the playoffs were really ever on. I think we have to be realistic that after that day in Colchester and the December, what was it, the 3rd, if somebody had said to us, all of us sitting here tonight, you're going to finish 12th, 1, we'd have snapped their hand off, and 2, we'd probably have laughed. We're going to finish 12th? No way. But we did, and that hopefully will take us into next season feeling really buoyed up, provided our manager gets the backing from those upstairs. Because we felt similar, didn't we, when we had Mr. Flynn a few years ago? He wasn't backed. We were at Forest Green with a load of kids on the bench in August, and we all were looking around at each other going, where's the rest of the team? So we've got the nucleus of a really good squad, 12 or 13 players. If we can bring some quality in, we should be up there, shouldn't we, this season, and building on the momentum that's seen us get to 62 points and 12th place in the league at the end of this season.
Yeah, played 46 points, 62, finished in 12th after the 0-0 draw with Milton Keynes. It's a bizarre sort of statistic that Will Wright scored our opening goal of the season. He scored the goal against Bromley, an own goal, and then he scored our last goal of the season, which is a very strange statistical anomaly. But we should say he played 52 times, Ray, and scored 6 goals. I mean, talk about consistency. He was fabulous, wasn't he?
Yeah, he really was, and he went through a bit of a transition as well, because you knew his skill level straight away anyway, but he's definitely become a little bit of more of a domineering centre half now. He does win a few more headers than he was doing, so he's definitely more competitive, which is really good. And you know, obviously he was up there with the accolades for Player of the Year. And I was just thinking on that actually, because between Will and Harry Smith, basically they mopped up in terms of the awards. But I actually sort of left that presentation evening thinking, is it possible that we might have our 2 players of the year actually stay with us next year? If you think back, normally that top person's gone, aren't they? But there's even a chance that these 2 kind of shared the awards, really. And there's a real chance they could be here next year, which would be a massive testament to Holloway if that was the case.
Yeah, definitely. Right, the goal scorers, of course, Harry Smith on top, 17 from 44 matches. Shimanga, 13 from 44 matches. Yeah, this is from Adrian. Speaking to you at Bradford, that was the worst 2 teams I've seen this season. The home game, the best 2 teams I've seen this season. I mean, it's like the Sheffield United playoff game, wasn't it, a few years back, which I still think is the most crazy game I've ever seen, although Bradford's up there now. Right, well, let's go quickly round and sort of sum it up for us and how we felt. Rob, how did you feel this season was, bearing in mind where we were at one point and where we could have been?
Well, I think there's a strange sense when you're a football supporter, isn't there, that you feel like you've seen all this before because you've been going so often, and it just, you just sort of like get into a little routine. These things happen, those things happen. I don't think I've ever seen a season like this. I truly don't. The emotions of being the worst team in the division, to the euphoria of that Bradford game and those finishes that you were talking about. We have been on the proverbial emotional roller coaster as Swindon supporters this year, haven't we? The positive, of course, is the fact that the dips were all in the first half of the season. The real benefits and the steps forward were clearly made after that Colchester game, and we saw the rewards that we got from it towards the back end. So Mark summed it up: back the manager, get behind the team next season, and we all have that nice little warm fuzzy feeling at the moment. And we didn't want the season to end, did we? Let's be honest. If it had carried on a few more weeks, who knows where we'd have ended up.
Yeah, there was that sequence of 4 draws, wasn't there, that kind of did for it as well as 8 points down the toilet, wasn't it? And so
you read out those goals, Vic. 5 goals against Bradford, 4 goals against Fleetwood, 4 goals against Grimsby. I mean, you look at go back to those horrible months of August, September, and October, and you were wondering if we'd score 4 goals all season, let alone 4 goals in a game.
Yeah.
So it is a minor miracle, really, from where we came from to where we ended up. It has to be said, and it's all testament to that Coach Holloway. We're all with him, Gus. We're all with him, I tell you.
Yeah, Harry Smith, we should say, of course, who's taken a battering from every single defender in the entire Football League. Bearing in mind what happened at Barrow, he's done a remarkable job. Bearing in mind he was kicked and pulled. And a dear old friend of mine, Ken Firth, who used to be a football manager, he used to say that they ought to have a paper strip down the back of their shirt so that when the shirt was pulled, you could see it being pulled off, and that was a yellow card. I mean, Harry Smith had his shirt pulled off at one point. It was ripped, wasn't it? So, Gus, your thoughts on the season? I mean, you're coming halfway through. You're now in this madness. What have your thoughts been?
Well, I mean, as a sports fan in any sport, my number one goal is I want it to be fun. I want to have fun. I want to watch good sport. I want to have our team win, of course, if they can, but I want it to be enjoyable. If I knew that we were going to win every single game for the next 25 years, it'd be boring. I mean, it wasn't boring. It wasn't boring. It was exciting. And also, I thought to myself as the season was ending, I want to enjoy the moment. I don't want to think too much about next year yet. I want to enjoy the moment. Bradford was fantastic. Didn't end quite the way we wanted with a few of the games, but it was a fun season, and that's really the main thing that I care about. Of course, I want to win. Of course, I want them to be promoted. But the one thing that's obviously going to be steady for the next 3 years is Coach Holloway, which is good because my impression, you all know way better, is that in this league, if you get good, you move up. You're gonna go. So he's not going for 3 years, probably. So that's a really positive thing because he seems to be good at motivating. I'm looking forward to having a full season with Amin and Ripley. If they sign him again.
If they sign, yeah.
I also am going to predict, I think Butterworth is going to have a breakout year next year and knock everybody's socks off and score 25 goals and just be the best guy on the field. And my last point I want to make is, as somebody who doesn't know how this game is played, I think when the ball gets kicked out of bounds, the guy who throws it back in needs to throw it back in where it got kicked out of bounds. I see people edging up. And
this is traditional.
2 yards beyond where it was, And honestly, I think in the Bradford game, 2 of the 3 goals like that, I think they did that. I don't think they had the throw-in that they wanted, so they just made the throw-in that they wanted. All right, I'm done.
No, that's a great point. We've said that for many years, to be fair. And I've watched 2 local cup finals over the weekend, and that happened a lot. So, yes. So you're right. It should be tightened up. Andrew, this is from Daz. Just a quickie. Any thoughts on Nationwide pulling out of the sponsorship? That's happened today, isn't it? Have we heard anything from the football club about that?
No, we haven't. No, I think that was probably going to be a point I was going to come on to if you want me to sort of sum up the end. The word fun has finally been dragged back into our vocabulary after a good, what would you say, kind of 2.5, almost 3 seasons without it, bar some early Mike Flynn madness, which we kind of knew in our hearts wasn't really going to be sustainable with the squad. So I think we end up leaving it with the kind of feeling that in football terms, at least, it's hopefully bottomed out, and there is actually the potential to, build some kind of squad that actually really can challenge for promotion rather than us all have it lip service paid to us on our behalf that the squad is designed to challenge for promotion. But I guess the Nationwide comes back to things. The one thing we haven't really healed and has possibly deepened at this point is that there is still a fracture between parts of the fan base at the very least and the owners, and how that gets resolved is also going to be important in kind of our future, I think, in determining, will fans come back? If it was just a footballing question, then I think our gates would already be significantly better than they are, because you can't knock the entertainment we've pretty much had since since Gus arrived. Coincidence or not?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're welcome.
You take full credit for it, Gus. Anna, your thoughts on the season? I mean, gosh. I don't know if there's ever been a season when you've had just about every emotion you could possibly have. This has been it, hasn't it?
Yeah, I agree with what everyone else has said, and along with Andrew, I'm hopeful. Something needs to give in terms of the relationship between the fans and the hierarchy at the club, and that is really of paramount importance when you come to what's happening on the pitch. On the pitch, you'll kind of feel like we're sorted in a way, because Holloway is, I hate to use the word magician, but some of the stuff that he turned around and the way he turned those players around was wizardry, nothing short of really. One of my overriding thoughts for the latter half of the season was I just loved it when we had 5 or 6 forwards on by the end of the game. We were playing something like 1-3-6, and the look on the opposition face when they learned that your 2 wing backs, and perhaps even one of your centre backs was actually a striker, and that's how you want to play. It's cliched, but attack is the best form of defence, and we're the best one in the world. If somebody's chucking balls into the box ad infinitum for 20 minutes, something's going to give. So let's go up the other end of the pitch and beat teams 5-4, and that's the way where I'd like to see the football being played. As long as we're on top, as long as we come out on top in the end. But
I mean, it must be
no room for complacency, I suppose.
Maybe you must be quite frightening when you're a tired defender and they bring on the likes of Wesley and Glatzel and people like that. I mean, to use an American term, they're the closers, and they were very effective in that role, weren't they, Mark? I mean, it was lovely, wasn't it? When he's the sort of manager, you're 3-0 up, and you think, okay, most managers will bring a defender on and try and close the game out. Oh no, let's go and get a fourth.
I think against Bradford, I think he had about one defender. I think he had Will Wright on, and the rest of them were either midfielders or attackers. And you just thought, oh my God, you're just going for it. But it paid off. It paid off so many times. So great credit to Coach Holloway for that. Great credit to him for making the players fitter, because they were undoubtedly fitter. You don't win games at the end of games like we did in 90+4 and all that unless you're fit. Makari fit probably would be fair. So he'd obviously got them fitter. And it's interesting as well when you hear people like Harry Smith, who, by the way, I really rate. It's been great to have a proper target man this season. Talk about how Holloway came in and turned it round with some of the meetings they had, where they just wrote down as strikers what was wrong with the defenders and what the defenders thought of the strikers, and just being totally honest with it. And I think he emerges with so much credit. I think some people doubted him, but now we can't look back. We're starting the season, may I remind people, for the 5th consecutive time in League Two. That's something that's never happened in our history. So that man that's brought such pleasure to us over the last 6 months or so must be backed properly. None of this rubbish about, budgets and how they're going to be competitive. Back him properly and he'll probably get us promoted. If you back him in a half-hearted way, and that's the worry that I have, we'd probably end up mid-table again. So back him properly. Anna's right. There's still this disconnect between the hierarchy and some of the fan base. So we must get that right. I'm no fan of Morfuni's at all. I want somebody else to come in. I know there's possibly nobody out there. I'd love to think there was, and back us properly, back the coach, and get this football club moving. What's happened after 5 years of Morfuni? Nothing much. He's lucky that he found Holloway. Otherwise, where would we be? So, back the man properly or sell up and go is what I would say.
Yeah,
Ray?
Yeah. For me, first of all, in the season, I honestly was racking my brains. I can't remember a season of such contrast. I'm really glad it was this way round and ended in the way it has, with something to look forward to next year. For me, Holloway's done a fantastic job. I really hope this is the start of an era. I know David Wallace has just got his book out on the Lou Macari years. Yeah. We haven't had that sort of era, have we, for so long? And I really hope this is the start of a period where we can look back on and think, well, that was great, because the first bit has been. And I really hope that the off-field stuff, we can still find a way as a supporters base to stay behind Holloway and the team, in spite, which is what's happened in spite of what goes on in the background as well. And I really hope that doesn't derail him, because if he's got, the conditions he needs, then it's a positive outlook, and maybe we will get that era.
It would be nice to have an era. We thought we were going to get one under Wellens, didn't we? But it didn't quite map out like that. And we're still surprised when Harry Smith was central defender against Wimbledon, weren't we? As they were that night. So there we are. Thank you all very much indeed, not only for this evening, but for your help throughout the entire campaign, which has at times been, how can I put this, tawdry and awful, but at times exhilarating and fabulous. So it's been one of those most memorable seasons that you can possibly ever think about, really, for sometimes the wrong reasons, but sometimes the right reasons, and it makes you wonder, that's why we go to football. So let's have more of those next season, and let's enjoy it as we did for the latter part of this campaign. Rob, Gus, Andrew, Anna, Mark and Ray, thank you so much all the way through the course of the campaign. There you are, Chris. Don't forget, Fools Rush In is on at 9 o'clock if you want more football content with Swindon Town. Are you there, Chris? Well, there was a little spin. There she comes, I think. Not yet. We're going to get them. There you are. Oh, no, she's gone again. Thank you, Stephen, for your thank you. That's very kind. Thank you very much indeed. I don't know. I don't think we're going to get Chris somehow. No, it's not going to happen, is it? No. So anyway, we should also say a big thank you to Chris as well, who puts all this together and has worked tirelessly throughout the course of the season. Job. We will be here throughout the summer. We'll be talking to ex-players and stuff, and we're also going to have a panel about your favourite goals as well, and hopefully getting some of those goal scorers on to talk about them. So I think, Chris, if you could just shut us all down, that would be lovely. Thank you very much indeed, and have a great summer.
Thank you.
See you in August, Vic.
Well,
see ya.
Cheers all.
Everybody.
Bye.
could talk amongst ourselves for a little while, but we are still
still
live,
live?
so please don't swear.
I think we might
Yeah,
still
we're
be
still
live.
live.
Oh, let's start again. What do we think? We can contradict everything we've just said.
we could do an alternative view, an alternative panel.
Right. Let's do the blue version.
Yeah. Actually, talking of the Blues, we had Roy Jones on last week, a former goalkeeper from the 1960s who makes cigar box guitars, and he was talking about his love for the Blues as well. So we'll get him on one night to talk about that, because it's a fantastic story. So there we are.
Are we doomed to stay on here until
Forever.
we get switched off?
We're never
It's
going
like
to
being
bed.
trapped in a virtual world.
Yeah. How Bristol City getting on? Do we know? Let's have a look.